The first thought that comes to mind when sitting down to watch Avatar: The Way of Water in an IMAX theater is, thank you, James Cameron, for thinking of us. There's no breathing space for a second thought to arrive. Hey all, my name is Sucharita. Welcome back to my channel where you will find me talking about movies, new reviews and interviews and soon much more. Today we're talking about Avatar: The Way of Water in theaters this week. If there ever was a movie more deserving and frankly demanding of a sequel, it might be Avatar. The bad Americans were chased out of Pandora, but because we were told with a childish sincerity back in the first one just how bad the bad guys were. You remember they were looking for a mineral cutely called unobtainium, a MacGuffin one might find the Powerpuff Girls hunting as Mojo Jojo sneers. One can now safely assume the bad guys are going to come back. ऐसे थोड़ी चले गए. Sure enough, over 10 years after they'd left tail between legs, the Americans are back, of which a team is headed once again by Colonel Miles Quaritch, resurrected as a Na'vi with memories of his human life embedded in via chip. In the interim, Jake Sully has embedded himself into Pandoran life. He's married to Neytiri. He now has 4 children, 2 biological sons, 1 adopted daughter, and an adopted human son, Spider. In a lengthy exposition-y prologue, we are told how the Resources Development Administration (RDA) has once again returned to Pandora and why Jake and his family are now refugees fleeing a war-torn part of their world. I rewatched the first Avatar a few months ago when it re-released in IMAX, and I was amazed at how well it held up. Criticism about a thin plot with focus mainly on SFX world building aside, that movie mostly worked for me because it featured a protagonist with as much of an internal journey as the external Earth to Pandora flight. Jake Sully was a bitter ex-soldier who had lost the use of his legs. By becoming a Na'vi, he received a superhuman physical body and an understanding of the folly of his ways as a foot soldier of a greedy corporation. His palpable catharsis served as the movie's emotional anchor, rooting the otherworldly story in a believable reality. There was a backstory, a brother he had lost whose place he now must take, denounce imperialism, find acceptance.
I need you with me. And I need you to be strong.
The video logs might have been a crutch, nicely explaining one by one what was happening, but they fit in, they worked. For the time, they were clever. Here, the reason behind the fourth wall breaking voiceover just never comes. We hear Jake's voice telling us in past tense about the events we're seeing on screen, not just in the prologue, but throughout, right till the end, as if he's sitting in his living room, an old man telling his grandkids how I met your Na'vi mother. What also throws you off is the constantly changing narrator. We don't stay with Jake the whole time. Major chunks of the screenplay are subplots dedicated to the Sully children, mostly the second son Lo'ak and the adopted daughter Kiri. While there isn't anything inherently wrong with changing the storytelling point of view in a movie, we've just been told that we're watching this movie via Jake Sully as his voiceover carried on. How then does he know what the whale-like creatures, the Tukuns, were saying to Lo'ak in papyrus font on a day he's not even on that scene? The switching narrators make the stories seem disjointed and sitcom-like, the storytelling choice more jarring than it needed to be. Perhaps in the future Avatar movies we'll find out why James Cameron, a better filmmaker than most this world has seen ever, has done this. And we might have reasons for everything. We'll find out. The voiceover also tells you why the Na'vi and later the water-dwelling Metkayina are speaking in American English, a reason just a tad hard to buy into, you'll see.
Treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways. Keep up, Forest Boy!
As the action moves from the trees to the water, we are told to follow the exploration of this new world with childlike wonder, following the Sully children. Succeeding where Wakanda Forever failed a little bit, The Way of Water offers beautiful and bright, visible and vivid underwater shots in all hues of blue and green, mystical creatures floating about. These sequences are the movie's biggest success. The motion smoothing, which makes the overwater shots look like a really, really well done video game. They work wonders beneath the surface of the majestic Pandoran seas. Here you meet Cliff Curtis as Tonavari and Kate Winslet as his wife Ronal. They take in the refugee Sully family, agreeing to shelter them at great personal risks. But I wish these two characters had more to offer as characters. Ronal specifically just seems like she's Neytiri from the first movie. The aggression and grief are both too familiar. We also meet their kids who playfully almost get the Sully children killed, so that's another subplot going for ya.
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
Let's do it.
Look, I'm not mad at Avatar: The Way of Water. I did enjoy the movie, particularly the climactic sequence, harking back to James Cameron's most globally popular and successful epic Titanic. Having said that, important characters stuck in a sinking vessel, rapidly losing oxygen, should invoke more of an emotional reaction, which sadly in me it did not. It felt more like an MCU movie with MCU-like dialogue, which again is not a bad thing and is fully enjoyable. It's just not what I expected from The Way of Water, which had a remarkably moving trailer. Edie Falco is in here as well, as a human commander of the bad guy fleet. And aside from a cool shot of her drinking coffee using a robotic hand, I have no idea why she's in this film and what she's supposed to make us feel. James Cameron is a master of world building. Very few filmmakers have the vision this man possesses, displaying so well the extent to which a human mind can stretch, creating creatures and landscapes where none exist, and then inventing the tech to go with it. The Way of Water feels very personal too. This man is famous for his love for the deep sea and emotion he brings out ever so poetically in this new film. And in the one thread that did tug at my heart a bit, young teenage children with an inordinate amount of pressure on them save the day, a storyline that perhaps comes from a father contemplating how his choices will shape his legacy. James Cameron is a man and a filmmaker very respectfully dedicated to bringing a grand viewing experience to a money-paying audience, inventing cameras, lenses, all kinds of tech to that end, right? For my Indian brethren, he's also included a mention of an ultra-valuable liquid named Amrita. But also thanks to our censor board, you will be denied many cuss words in this film, including bitch. But somehow, shit made the cut. Go figure. My point is, even when I couldn't find the emotional core of the movie to attach my choti to and bind with its soul, I didn't feel disregarded or unacknowledged. Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, an incredible Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, they're all diligently committed to Cameron's vision and its application via motion capture. The podium from which Cameron is broadcasting is humongous, it's vast. His anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, pro-harmony, community, and oneness with nature messages are all great and wonderful. Though even if the movie doesn't fully work for you like it did not for me, any day you're watching a James Cameron film is a better day than most.
The Way of Water connects all things.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, Avatar: The Way of Water is one direct Hamlet symbolism you will find in this film, but it's flipped on its head with regards to what it means. I won't give away what it is and when it arrives. जब आप मूवी में देखिएगा तो यहाँ इधर कमेंट में आके बताइएगा, okay? जाने से पहले subscribe to my channel, please. My name is Sucharita. Thank you for stopping by.